Hey there, gang. Scott here from my home office. And in this video, I want to talk about the earliest stages of selling and getting to really two things. Talking about the first 10 customers of product market fit. And so the backdrop on this is really kind of thinking about the stages of the startup that we go through, the stages of the company. We know that there are, and at least you hear me talk about this all the time, there's these three phases of growth, right? There's startup phase, ramp up phase, and there's scale up phase, right? So if you've been to my workshops or you've kind of been in the program for a while, you may have seen this once or twice before. And so just to specifically break down, what we're talking about here is in this first stage of growth, typically when we're selling to the enterprise, we're selling a B2B product, particularly if it's a larger enterprise product, thousands of dollars per month or $100,000 or $50K a year or more. What we're really trying to do is get 10 paying customers, right? And the reason that's important, because if we look at the journey of the startup from the time you start with your idea to the place of $10 million, $100 million, $1 billion valuation, and making real impact in your marketplace, those that first stage, getting those first 10 paying customers, is really about three things. The first, it's about getting problem product fit. It's about finding customers, people willing to pay you money, and generating revenue. And that revenue may vary widely based on the customer that you have. And so more specifically, a lot of times we are in this, we can be in this rush, relatively speaking, where we want to feel like, hey, we've got product market fit. And that's really that first part of the selling process. Getting those first 10 paying customers is designed to move you in the direction of product market fit. It's not to prove product market fit because you have 10 customers. It's to move you in the direction of product market fit. And let me kind of show you an example of this, of why this works this way, right? So if we think about, you've got kind of the types of customers. It could be a pretty wide range of customers. You could have, big customers, large customers in one industry, customers in another industry. So the spectrum, possible number of companies is pretty wide when you're first starting out. And we have a hypothesis oftentimes around the types of customers that we best serve. But oftentimes, we might get inbound leads from market segments we weren't expecting. We might get introductions from investors or advisors. We might, in our own network, have people that we know that we may not have intended to sell to that said, hey, that sounds really interesting. Like, could you tell me more? Maybe we could use your product. We could use your technology here at our company. And so I'm going to use a couple of different examples. Specifically, I'll start with my example at using Blend, which is a software company selling to banks and mortgage lenders. And our first couple of customers, our very, very first contract was a teeny tiny little lending company called Lenda. Lenda was an upstart lender. They were literally doing like 10 or 20 loans a month, like super, super small lender in the marketplace. But the reason they were really interested in working with Blend is because we had the latest and greatest technology for originating loans. So the customer experience was fantastic. It was better technology than anybody had ever built. And for Lenda, a brand new upstart lender, it aligned really well strategically with how they wanted to brand and what they wanted to be as a lender, as a mortgage lender. And so I happened to know the founder of this company through some network. And, we started talking. I said, hey, Jason, I'm now at Blend. I know you're at Lendo, maybe we should chat. And so we talked, and a month later, 6 months later, we had a contract that we were going to start implementing our software as their way of originating mortgages. Customer number one. Now, 4 weeks later, customer number two, Freddie Mac, where the original contract with Lenda, they paid us $100 deposit, and they were going to pay us on a per loan basis. The contract was really, really small. We didn't really care about how much money we were making. We were like, hey, we actually got somebody to pay us money for this thing. This is pretty cool. Now, on the other hand, Freddie Mac, they were using the very same platform on which we were going to build the workflows for Lenda to do their loan origination. they were going to use the same platform in mortgages, in the mortgage space, but to do it, use mostly the platform for data analysis, kind of like back end sort of things. And so we had all of these components and all of these functionalities built in, because in the long run, as we were helping lenders originate a lot of mortgages, we wanted to take that data and put it into an engine where you could do lots of data analysis, right? Big data thing. And so we had that already working pretty well. And so when we talked with Freddie Mac, again, through network, an executive who we knew that had a very specific problem and had lots of urgency and had a big budget, in this case, $400,000, he said, hey, can you get this thing going in the next couple of weeks? And we said, yeah, we can do it. So I'm going to take a quick pause here and I'll be right back. Okay, so Lenda, first customer, Freddie Mac, second customer. Third customer, NationStar. Now, what was odd about NationStar is that we were working in the loan origination space. At least that's what we said we wanted to do. And NationStar wanted to use our same platform for workflow around mortgage servicing, which is collecting money from borrowers, not actually originating loans. So the platform and the workflow that we had built out, the technology was useful and usable, whether it was in servicing or originations. And so they were willing to pay us a decent amount of money, in this case, $50K a month, after we did some pilots, to do this work for them. And so we went and did a big, long 6-month implementation with them and got them up and running. So those are our first 3 customers. The fourth customer and fifth customer were Freedom Mortgage, which is the largest, I think at the time, might still be the largest I think FHA loan lender. I'm not sure what it is, but they're one of the biggest mortgage companies in the United States. And then the next one was First Republic Bank, which is mostly on the West Coast, but a large lender dealing with lots of very large mortgages, because they have branches in Los Angeles and San Francisco and lots of other big expensive markets. And so, as you can see, there's actually quite a big difference in terms of small lender, big important lenders, Freedom Mortgage, First Republic, lenders that were using the platform for non-origination purposes, and somebody that was in the mortgage space but not a lender, or actually an investor using it for data analysis. So you look at this and go, well, you kind of scratch your head. It's like, okay, well, we got these 5 customers, and these customers are paying us now, over, in terms of ARR, over $1 million a year. Like, what sort of product market fit do we have? And the answer was like none, really. But what we started to see, obviously, this is where the space we wanted to be in. We wanted to be in mortgage origination, and we also wanted to be in the mortgage space with the top lenders in the United States. While working with small lenders like Lenda was great, in order to sort of get things rolling, it was not the way that we wanted to pursue growth in the company. There's 8,000 mortgage lenders and brokers across the United States. We didn't want to have to sell to the other 7,999 other small ones. We really only wanted to sell to the top 100. But it took the first 5 customers just to get 2 of those. But after that, then we were able to get Wells Fargo and a few other lenders. Eventually, it was US Bank, and several others in that top 100. So what ended up happening here, from a product market fit standpoint, we started really wide. So we got our first, call this our first 10 customers, right? But of those first 10, really only 4 of them were kind of what we would consider those in our kind of product market fit or target market. But it took us the work with these earliest customers that were willing to pay us a small amount of money, very large customers that were willing to pay us a lot of money that helped us get some market validation. Actually banging away every day, having somebody use the workflows engine that was built, have developers have to fix bugs every single day. Those were the first 3 customers, and these were a necessary step. At least in this case, it would have been great to be able to go right into First Republic and Freedom Mortgage and Wells Fargo. But the amount of learning that we captured in that first year was enormous. So before we even got to customers 5 and 6, or excuse me, 6 and 7 with Wells Fargo and US Bank, we had gone, this was basically, I think it was from 2013, 14 to roughly 2016. So in those 2 years, I think those days are right. Maybe it's 13 to 15. I can't remember exactly. But it basically took us 2 calendar years to go, more than 2 calendar years, to go from very first customer paying us any kind of money to the point where we're like, okay, we now have the product dialed in. We have the messaging dialed in. We have the value proposition dialed in. We have some proof points. We've got enough sort of social proof because we can say, yes, we've worked with Freddie Mac and Nation Star and First Republic and Freedom, that these other lenders like Wells Fargo and US Bank were willing to have conversations with us. And so the pipeline started to get really more focused on the types of customers that we wanted to serve. But even though that was always the mission and vision of the company, it took those first few companies, those first few implementations to help us get there. So I say that in context of this, this desire to want to get product market fit. And in the startup stage, from the point you go to idea in the garage, figuratively or sometimes literally, to the point of getting your first 10 customers. I mean, Blend was founded in 2012. So it was 2015, 2016, before we got those first 10 paying customers. It's just 4 years. Then we were able to kind of get into this ramp up stage where we were starting to do a couple $1 million a year. I think it was around 2 to 3 million in revenue, which is then when we were able to really accelerate with much larger rounds of investment. So I think it's really, really important to sort of get some context about the importance of, if you're in this first stage, if you're truly in the startup stage and you're just starting to sell your product into the enterprise, yes, it's important to have a focus and have a niche and have a hypothesis about the types of problems you solve. You need to have those things. You have to go in there with an educated plan of action, but go into it knowing that sometimes the plan is less important than the planning. Like the fact that you've gone in there with a hypothesis and you're able to see and adjust and calibrate your strategy because of the work that you've done ahead of time, that sometimes is more important than saying, well, we're not going to sell to this type of company, we're not going to sell to that kind of company. Because sometimes just crossing that penny gap, getting those first dollars, getting people to pay you is what proves this notion of product fit, that, hey, there's a problem that these customers have. You have a product that solves that problem, so much so that they see value enough to pay you money to solve that problem. And so this path to product market fit can sometimes take years. In fact, there's a really good article. Let me just show it to you real quick as we wrap up. I'll stop my share. I was one of the folks that I like to read is a guy named David Cummings. David Cummings founded his company is called Pardot, which is a marketing platform. And I'll just show you this post. And he writes on his blog, davidcummings.org, and he wrote an article about a year ago. And he talked about why product market fit often takes years. And here's his article. And so, as he describes it, you start this process of an idea, customer discovery, and start building a product, and then start trying to sell that product. You'll start to get that feedback. And that feedback is what helps you design an even better product or move in a different direction with a product. And so this idea of researching and testing and pivoting is the essence of the startup phase. And so it's a lot of trial and error, but the only way to do true product market fit is to go out there and start selling your stuff, which is what you have to do. And so once you start selling it, that means, quite literally, selling means that you're getting money for stuff. The product, somebody gives it to you, gives you money for it, you've sold it. And so doing that enough times will help you figure out what that product market fit starts to look like. And he has a second post, which I'll link to as well, which talks about how do you know if you have product market fit. And here's a couple things that he talks about. Obviously, passionate customers, so you have high retention. We actually, in the early stages, I showed you earlier where we had Freddie Mac and Linda, those were the first 2 customers that also churned. So we're actually quite happy to see them go because they weren't the ideal fit for us. So it was more important for us to keep and retain the customers that we wanted to be selling to. And so, sometimes you might have this churn before you get to the truly passionate customers. And he lists a couple of things you can see here on the screen in terms of getting things like referrals, active usage, customers' requests, and those sorts of things. So product market fit is not something you're just going to wake up one day and go, aha, we have it. It's something you're going to sense and feel when you start to see you're getting more referrals, you're starting to see how passionate your customers are. You'll have situations where your customers are up on stage at a conference and they're talking about you and telling you how amazing your product is and how amazing your company is and how they couldn't live without you. Those are all indications of product market fit. So it's not something you can force necessarily and say, oh, in the next 6 months, we're going to figure out product market fit. In the next 6 months, what you can do is run experiments and hypotheses tests around different segments and verticals and value propositions and different buyers and different price points. And as you're running those smaller experiments in the customer development phase, and then by selling, then you'll be able to narrow in on eventually product market fit, which could take years in this case. So anyway, that's just wanted to kind of share that sort of thoughts and perspective on product market fit, how to achieve it, what it means to get to it, and what it a lot of times takes in order to get there. It's a long ride, like David says in his blog post. I've had similar experiences in other startups where same thing, took a while to calibrate product market fit, but once you have it, you know it. And it's really great. So in the meantime, just run smaller hypothesis tests and hypothesis testing and experiments around your selling in terms of those value propositions and the buyers in different segments using different price points. That will start to give you the data that you need to accrue the information to then start really narrowing down on a market, in a problem, with a message to get to that place of product market fit. So, all right, that's it for now. Hope that's helpful. Thanks.